Right, another quick little tool review of the Kobalt 9-inch bandsaw. This is fairly new. I think it just came out a couple months ago. I've had mine not for very long, but I've had some time to use it, and it's kind of the Cadillac of this size range, at least in terms of features. It does have some cheaper parts, but I'm going to go over the things I like first. Some of the features it has that are unique, I think, to this size range. One is power, which is the reason I chose this as a 3 amp hour motor versus the more typical 2.5 amp power motor that is fairly typical on these 9-inch saws. Has a light underneath, and can't really see it, it's pretty bright out, but it's just a little LED light. It's right up under here. You can see it shining on the table. Table has some imperial measurement markers here, which is handy. Standard rail with a little miter gauge that slots in. It's the same cheap miter gauge that comes on pretty much everything from bandsaws to table saws, although it's a little shorter than the ones in a typical table saw. It's fairly square. I've checked it at 0 and at 45. I haven't checked all the indents on it, but fairly square. It does wobble just a little bit. I don't use it, but if I did, I'd probably put some tape on the bottom just to get it to sit in here a little more snug so it wouldn't rattle back and forth. Other than that, it's fine. It comes with a usable fence. Not a great fence, but at least one that can be used and can be relatively square. There is a trick to this, and that's to get this part here, as you twist it, it tightens and loosens the tension. Get it to where mine's about a 45-degree angle here, but get it to where it doesn't over tighten, and you can clamp it down, but then it's not so loose that it moves. To get it square, the trick is, and I'm going to use these lines here on the back side as a test gauge. You're going to have just a little bit of that sticking out. So to get it to be square, you want to push in on the bottom, and then it's hard to do with one hand. Push in towards the fence on the bottom, and then clamp it down. And you can see we have just about the same amount all the way down there. If I come around on this side, trying to get this on camera, all the way there. And it's not 100% perfect. Mine kind of bows in just a little bit here in the middle, but you see it's fairly square. Does the same tilt that all the tables do. Same plastic gears that are difficult to check if you move it. Highly recommend you do this with all your band saws. Raise this blade up and then get a square to check the blade for 90 degrees. I've got mine set. I'm not moving it. I don't tilt the table. Tabletop, it's oddly rough, and I've noticed this with some aluminum plates on some other tools. I got a Craftsman planer, and it's got these ribs, like these machining ribs. I don't know if it's just cost savings, they don't flatten it out, or if that texture has any kind of engineering type benefit. I don't know. You guys know, let me know. I think it's just to reduce cost, honestly. But the best feature of this that I haven't seen on another bandsaw in this price range is this extending fence. I got two knobs down here. I can loosen, not fence, sorry, extending table, and the table comes out, and you can adjust how much further out. It's just a few more inches, but it allows me to rest something on here and do some cuts without this whole thing wobbling and falling off. I can just leave it on top, so that is nice. In terms of power, the reason I wanted a 3 amp is 2.5 amp has some difficulty cutting through hardwood. You're not going to be doing much in the way of rib cuts. You mostly just do carving, and that's why I don't mind having a 9-inch bandsaw. Even if I upgrade, say I get a 14-inch or a 240 volt larger bandsaw, I would mostly use that for ripping And this for curved cuts. The reason these aren't good for ripping, other than power, but is this blade is so thin. When you try to do any kind of rip cut, it's going to wobble. I don't care how much setup you've done on here. I've set this thing up to death and try to do rips. It absolutely will not. Setup is pretty easy. You know, you got your adjustment screws here, and then you have some more in the bottom. We'll look at those later. And then your tools just mount on the back. You got all your directional indicators and instructions here. Keeps things simple. Tension adjust up here is pretty simple. It does have all these plasticky knobs and levers, but they're gonna have this price. They all do. The parts I'm not really crazy about are these latches. I don't like these plastic panel latches. They just seem flimsy. And to me, this is probably the weak point of the entire saw. Plastic doors, I don't mind those so much. You know, they've got metal hinges at least. I think they'll hold up. The wheel seems fine. Your tension adjust there, that's fine. Let's come down, open the bottom one too. Got your drive belt. Your drive, it's got a brush up here that kind of brushes the dust off of the lower wheel. Just, you know, where all this dust is going to come down anyway. You got your vacuum port. It works okay, but I'm working outside, so I'm just blowing it off with the leaf blower. I haven't changed the blade. It's still got the stock blade on it. I do have a Bosch replacement. I might do a comparison on a Bosch blade versus the stock blade. Seems to cut okay for what I'm using it for. And there's power switch. It's got the little safety chock that can come out, I think. I haven't taken it out. Oh, there it goes. And then you can hide that and the saw won't turn on. I don't want to lose it, so I'm just going to leave it in there. My kids know how to play with this. They're kind of old for that anyway. And I don't have any cats. But that's it. It's pretty quiet. Doesn't make a lot of noise. It's definitely a lot quieter than a than a table saw, that's for sure. At least smaller table saws. You could run this in the house or in the garage and not wake everybody up. You know, it does make an awful noise when cutting. There's some maple. You know, a little screechy, not too bad. And yeah, I think that's going to do it. I might do a blade change and a blade review later, but till then, at this price point, I think this is about as good as you can get. It's about $220 at Lowe's. The other box store, Home Depot, they have the Ryobi, and if you got $120 and you're at a Lowe's or a Home Depot, go to Lowe's, get the Kobalt. The Ryobi has the 2.5 amp motor, so this has a whole half an amp more, has no light, doesn't come with a fence. I think it comes with a miter gauge, and that's pretty much it. You don't get the extending table. So for the same money, I would go for this. You're squealing on the way down. I'd go for this all day long. If you have time to wait and you don't mind ordering one, honestly, I'd probably go to the Win. The Win has metal doors, cam lock, hinges. Now has a 2.8 amp motor. It used to have a 2.5. The 2.8, I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference between 2.8 and 3. It also comes with the exact same fence, which, like I said, is at least usable. It doesn't have a light, which is no big deal. I'm using this outdoors where I can see, or, you know, it'll go in my shop later in my garage where I have a lot of lights. So to me, that's not a huge minus. And this is nice, but it's not really a game changer. So like I said, if you got time to wait, grab a Win. I think the Bauer is also a little cheaper than this. Decent enough features. They're all pretty much the same. I'm fairly certain all of these 9-inch bandsaws come from the same factory. The skill is pretty good too, but this one just edges the skill out, and I don't think the cost difference is very high. So yeah, Kobalt 9-inch bandsaw. If you want all the bells and whistles and you got to buy new, you don't want to buy used, this is the one to go with.